I'm calling to order this meeting. This is a regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chairman of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Tuesday, June 20th, 2023, times 11:24 in the morning. This meeting is being held in the Council Chambers, room 500 of the Johnny Wilson Building. There are a couple of members, I believe, who are participating virtually. I believe the public can watch via the Zoom video conference platform, but public can also watch on Council Channel 13. And this meeting is being recorded and it's on the council's website, www.dccouncil.gov. This is a regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole. We have two items for consideration in the Committee of the Whole. We have one item from another committee. This meeting will be followed by a additional meeting of a legislative meeting of the council. We begin our Committee of the Whole meetings determining a quorum. Mr. Cash, would you call the roll?
Chairman Mendelson.
Present.
Councilmember Allen. Here. Councilmember Bonds. Councilmember Fruman.
Here.
Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Lewis George.
Here.
Councilmember McDuffie.
Here.
Councilmember Nadeau.
Here.
Councilmember Parker. Here. Councilmember Pinto. Councilmember Robert White.
Present.
Councilmember Trayon White.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. We have the Secretary's report of committee filings, but I don't believe there was any committee filings in the past week. Madam Secretary, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
All right, so I'm not going to recognize the Chair Pro Tem for a motion to waive the reading of the Secretary's report because there is none. However, we do have the Secretary's log of introductions and referrals, and I'll recognize the Chair Pro Tem, Mr. McDuffie.
And I will move to waive the reading of the Secretary's log of introductions and referrals.
There's been a motion to waive the reading of the log. Is there discussion? By a voice vote on the motion to waive the reading, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We'll turn to measures in the Committee of the Whole. Council rules require that committees approve staff hirings, and a couple of months ago, the Committee of the Whole hired on its staff Bijan Verlin, who is a legislative policy advisor, full-time, lives in Ward 4, and works with the Committee of the Whole on educational issues. There's a resolution to confirm his appointment, and I move that resolution. It was circulated last week with the agenda. Is there discussion? By a voice vote, all those in favor of the resolution to approve the appointment of additional staff, Mr. Bijan Verlin, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? I don't hear any no votes. The resolution is approved unanimously. We have one item for markup. That's Bill 25-70, St. Augustine Schoolway Designation Act of 2023. Bill 25-70 would symbolically designate the 1400 block of V Street Northwest as St. Augustine Schoolway. This is a symbolic naming. It's for ceremonial purposes and is in addition to and subordinate to any name that is an official name. In this case, V Street being the official name. St. Augustine Catholic Church was established in 1858 as one of the district's oldest churches. It's served the community for over 165 years. The church stands as a testament to the rich history and spiritual legacy of the Catholic Church. It is known as the Mother Church of Black Catholics, as it was a beacon to the enslaved and free Black population of the district after the Civil War. The church is located at the northeast corner of 15th and V Streets. Alongside the church, St. Augustine Catholic School, which fronts V Street, offers pre-kindergarten through 8th grade education opportunities. The school prides itself on fostering a nurturing and inclusive environment that promotes academic excellence and spiritual growth. The school focuses on holistic development, combining rigorous academics with religious teachings and character formation. St. Augustine's was also an important player in the original Reeves Center development, where the church ceded some land and developed affordable housing. As a community partner, the church and the school have always made their buildings available for community meetings and provided office and meeting space for many affordable housing developers and nonprofits. St. Augustine Catholic Church and School are deeply committed to community outreach and engagement. The church hosts various ministries and programs that aim to uplift and support the local community. From food drives to youth programs, they actively strive to make a positive impact on the lives of those in need. Through its educational and outreach efforts, St. Augustine Catholic Church and School continue to be a pillar of faith, education, and service in the heart of the district. Symbolically designating this portion of V Street Northwest will memorialize contributions of St. Augustine's to the community, assuming adoption by the committee. And reading from the report, the committee of the whole recommends council approval of Bill 25-70, the St. Augustine School Way Designation Act of 2023. Bill 25-70 was introduced on January 25th of 2023 by Councilmember Nadeau. The committee of the whole held a hearing on the measure on March 14th, 2023. The committee received no testimony or comments in opposition. I should say the committee has received no testimony or comments in opposition to the bill. If there's no objection, I'll move both the print and the report with leave for staff to make technical and conforming changes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Thank you, Chairman. I truly appreciate you moving this legislation today to designate the 1400 block of V Street in Ward 1 as the St. Augustine School Way. You mentioned a great deal of the history of this church and the school. It was St. Augustine's Catholic Church is one of DC's oldest, founded in 1858 when its location was considered one of the most northernmost points in the city. What is now Florida Avenue was the northernmost boundary of the city of Washington. And it's always been a church comprised of, thank you, Madeline, comprised of and run by Black Catholics. In addition to being known as the Mother Church of Black Catholics, St. Augustine's was a beacon to the enslaved and free Black population of the city after the Civil War and into the modern era. Was a beacon for DC's Black community and has continued to help its congregants with food, shelter, educating the community, and at that time also worked to reknit itself after the aftermath of slavery. The St. Augustine School has educated generations of DC's elementary school age children and continues to do so, offering a strong and loving environment. And it is a very beloved part of Ward 1. And deeply enmeshed in our history. So thank you, Chairman, for advancing this measure.
Thank you, Councilmember Nadeau. Is there further discussion on the print and report? Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While I didn't attend St. Augustine's School, I grew up in St. Augustine's Church, did Sunday school in that building and sometimes summer school in that building. As a kid at St. Augustine's, we did a play about the origins of St. Augustine School, which is when I learned at a young age that the school is actually older than the church. It was started by parishioners in a basement to educate African-American kids before many African-Americans had any access to education. The strength of the commitment to education and to social justice has stood for well over 100 years. And given the history of St. Augustine's Church in this city, I'm really excited to see the recognition of St. Augustine's School, and will be proud to see this street designation when I have the occasion to go by the school and the church. So thank you for moving this to you, Chairman and Councilmember McDuffie, and I very much look forward to voting in favor of this measure.
Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman, and thanks to you and Councilmember McDuffie again for moving this important. I'd like to think opportunity for our community, particularly for the African American community. I guess my one question would be what took us, this community, so long to get to this point. But otherwise, I'm delighted and definitely I'm on board and will be supporting this. So thank you very, very much for moving this resolution.
Thank you, Councilmember Bond. I do want to reiterate for the record, the bill was introduced by Councilmember Nadeau. It was actually introduced last November, but reintroduced so that we could have a hearing on it in March. If there's no further discussion, we'll have a roll call vote. The vote is on the print and report with leave for staff to make technical conforming and editorial changes. Mr. Cash, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Gray is absent. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 absent.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. The print and report are approved unanimously. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Once the report is filed?
Madam Budget Counsel? Yeah, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements? Thank you. Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. We'll turn now to consideration of measures from other committees. We have PR 25-188, the Volunteers of America, Inc. National Service Center Relocation Tax Exemption Amendment Act of 2023. Reported out of the Committee on Business and Economic Development, chaired by Councilmember Kenyon McDuffie. Mr. McDuffie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of Bill 25-188 is to provide an exemption of the real property taxes owed for office and program space, and that the Volunteers of America, or VOA, will own and develop at Buzzard Point. As part of this development project, VOA intends to relocate its headquarters to the district from Virginia and develop 110 housing units on the premises, including 69 units reserved for those at the 30% of the median family income and 41 units reserved for those at 50% of the median family income. The committee made changes to the bill after discussions with the applicant and agency stakeholders after the hearing. And I'm excited that through this legislation, VOA is bringing jobs and affordable housing to the District of Columbia. With that, I would move the resolution. And I think it's going to be placed on a non-consent agenda.
Are there questions from members? Thank you, Mr. McDuffie. Madam General Counsel, is the measure legally and technically sufficient for our consideration?
Yes, it is.
Madam Secretary, is the record complete?
Yes, it is.
Madam Budget Counsel, does the measure's fiscal impact statement comply with council requirements?
Yes, it does.
Without objection, this measure will be placed on the consent agenda for today's legislative meeting. That's going to conclude the business.
Mr. Chairman, that should be,
What-
Mr. Chairman, sorry, that should be non-consent.
That's what I said. Without objection, this measure will be placed on the non-consent agenda for today's additional legislative meeting. Thank you. That is going to, anything else let's move on. There's no further business in the committee of the whole. The legislative meeting will start in 5 minutes following the adjournment of this meeting. The time is 11:39. This meeting is adjourned. I'm calling to order this meeting. This is this is an additional legislative meeting of the Council of the District of Columbia. It's the 11th legislative meeting of Council Period 25. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chairman of the Council. Today is Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. The time is 11:48 in the morning. This meeting is being held in the Council Chambers, Room 500 of the Johnny Wilson Building, although I believe there are a couple of members who are participating virtually via the Zoom video conference broadcast platform. This meeting is being broadcast on Council Channel 13 and is also available on the Council's website, www.dccouncil.gov. This is an additional meeting, as I said before. We always begin our legislative meetings with a moment of silence. It's a moment for reflection before we get into the nitty-gritty of the council agenda. Everyone in the chamber and participating virtually would please observe a moment of silence. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Allen,
Here.
Councilmember Bonds,
Here.
Councilmember Freeman,
Present.
Councilmember Gray, Councilmember Gray, Councilmember Henderson,
Here.
Councilmember Lewis George,
Here.
Councilmember McDuffie,
Here.
Chairman Mendelson,
Present.
Councilmember Nadeau,
Here.
Councilmember Parker,
Here.
Councilmember Pinto,
Present.
Councilmember Robert White,
Present.
Councilmember Trayon White. Councilmember Trayon White.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We have the consent agenda. Are there any changes to the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to confirm that the expanding access to fertility treatment was off consent.
It is not on consent. It's on page 2. It's the first item under non-consent.
Great, thank you.
I'm hearing no changes to the consent agenda. We'll have a roll call vote on the consent agenda. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Trayon White,
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen,
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds,
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman,
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray is absent. Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George,
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie,
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson,
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau,
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker,
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto,
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes, and Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 no.
12 yeses and
1 no. I mean, 1 absent.
1 absent. So
Yes.
the consent agenda is approved unanimously, 12-0. Turning to the non-consent agenda, we have Bill 25-34, expanding access to fertility treatment amendment act of 2023. Councilmember Henderson, this came out of your committee. If you would move it, and then I see you have an amendment.
Yes, sir. I do have an amendment. If I can offer that now.
Did you say so moved?
So moved. Yes.
Yes, and you're recognized for the amendment.
Great, thank you. This amendment was circulated by my staff. And it's properly, it's also linked on the agenda. I'm proposing a minor clarifying amendment today regarding the start date for coverage under the DC Health Alliance and Medicaid. This amendment is intended to address the fact that coverage under Medicaid cannot begin until the Federal Centers for Medicaid and Medicaid Services approves an amendment to the district's state Medicaid plan. Therefore, instead of specifying a date by which the federal government must approve the coverage, this amendment clarifies that the Department of Healthcare Finance must apply to amend the state plan to cover these services by January 1 of 2024. The coverage will then take effect on the date specified by CMS. Under the Alliance, coverage for diagnostic and medication treatment for infertility will still begin on January 1st, 2024. Everything else in this bill remains the same, and I urge my colleagues to support this amendment to ensure we get federal approval for our Medicaid changes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson. We have the amendment before us. Is there discussion on the amendment? By voice vote on the amendment, all those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? I don't see or hear any no's. The amendment is approved unanimously. We have the bill as amended. Further discussion? Roll call vote on the bill as amended. This is Bill 25-34. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray is absent. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. And Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 absent.
The bill as amended on final reading is approved unanimously. We have this is kind of interesting. Can somebody check quickly? Is Volunteers of America, Inc. It's a bill 25-188. It was on the committee of the whole as a PR.
It's a bill, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have that bill. And it's on non-consent. It just came out of the committee of the whole. Councilor McDuffie.
Just to briefly summarize, again, the purpose of Bill 25-188 is to provide an exemption of the real property taxes owed for office and program space, property that the Volunteers of America will own and develop at Budget Point. As part of this development project, VOA intends to relocate its headquarters to the District of Columbia from Virginia and develop 110 housing units on the premises, including 69 units reserved for individuals at 30% of the median family income and 41 units reserved for those at 50% of the median family income. I move the bill.
Is there discussion? We'll have a roll call vote on this.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Roll call vote. The vote is on Bill 25-188. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray is absent. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George. Councilmember Lewis George. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes, and Councilmember Louis George. Councilmember Louis George is absent. Mr. Chairman, there are 11 yeses and 2 absents.
The bill's approved unanimously on first reading. We have a final reading on temporary legislation, Bill 25-164, Comprehensive Policing and Justice Reform Temporary Amendment Act of 2023. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. At this point, I enthusiastically move to postpone this measure indefinitely.
A motion to postpone indefinitely this bill. I will note for the record that this originally accompanied an emergency bill several months ago, has been replaced by the permanent legislation, which was challenged in Congress, but missed the deadline for congressional review. That is, it was deemed, I don't want to say deemed approved. It passed the congressional review period. And so that would be why this motion to postpone indefinitely is before us. I believe it requires a voice vote. All those in favor of the motion to postpone indefinitely say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion is approved unanimously. Turning to emergency legislation. The first measure is Xi Omega Way Designation Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. This would enable consideration of the emergency bill, which is simply an emergency version of permanent legislation that has already been approved by the council, approved, I believe, at the last meeting on final reading. The reason for this is to allow for the dedication in conjunction with the sorority's 100th anniversary, while the permanent legislation is pending congressional review. I move the declaration. Is there discussion? A roll call vote on the declaration. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray is absent. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Louis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Louis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. And Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 absent.
The declaration is approved unanimously. I move the underlying bill, Bill 25-329, Xi Omega Way Designation Emergency Act of 2023. Is there discussion? We can do this by a voice vote since the declaration was approved unanimously. All those in favor of Bill 25-329, say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is Howard East Towers Alley Closing and Street Dedication Emergency Declaration Resolution 2023, BR 25-278. This legislation orders the closing of an alley. The underlying bill orders the closing of an alley in square 2873. Establishes a 25-foot wide building restriction line in the closed alley area It dedicates a portion of lot 1112 in the square for public street purposes. This will enable or facilitate the construction of a mixed-use development with approximately 500 multifamily units and over 17,000 square feet of retail space. Permanent legislation ordering the closure and dedication and building restriction line was approved unanimously on second reading June 6th. Enacting this legislation sooner than the congressional review period, which is required for the permanent legislation, will enable the project to proceed without risk of further delay. This area, if I remember correctly, is between 8th and 9th Streets and between, I think it's W and Bryant Streets in the area of Howard University. I move the declaration. Is there discussion? I'll have a roll call on the declaration, PR 2025-278. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Gray is absent, so Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. And Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. Bill 25-341 is the underlying bill, so moved. Is there discussion? Since the declaration was approved unanimously, I think we can have a voice vote on the bill. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The bill is approved unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-277, Local Rent Supplement Program Eligibility Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. The declaration will, if approved, will enable us to consider the permanent bill. The purpose of the underlying bill is to amend the Housing Authority Act of 1999 to allow applicants for local rent supplement vouchers to self-certify eligibility factors such as income, and to prohibit the Housing Authority from inquiring into an applicant's immigration status or prior criminal arrest, to convictions or pending criminal matters for purposes of determining eligibility for or receipt of a local rent supplement voucher. This legislation was approved as an emergency and temporary last fall. The temporary bill became effective December 13th and expires on July 26th. The permanent measure is pending in the Housing Committee. This is a second round of emergency enactment. It's necessary to prevent a gap in the law. I move the declaration. Is there discussion? I will have a roll call vote on the declaration PR 25-277. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes, and Councilmember Gray is absent. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. I move the underlying bill, Bill 25-339. Is there discussion? Since the declaration was approved unanimously, we'll do a voice vote on the bill, Bill 25-339. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-268, Association Meeting Flexibility Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Chairman. Since 2014, the permanent versions of our condominium and cooperative association laws have said that an association board may meet remotely, but the permanent law offers no express permission for virtual meetings of the full association. This became a problem in 2020 when large associations couldn't meet in person without violating COVID mandates and thus had no safe and lawful way to satisfy their annual meeting requirements. In October 2020, Chairman Mendelson, Councilmember Bonds, and our former colleague, Councilmember Mary Che, introduced an emergency legislative package to address this problem. In the year since, the council has repeated this same tweak, but we folded it into various COVID emergency and temporary omnibus bills. The most recent example was called the Post-Public Health Emergency Protections Extension Temporary Amendment Act of 2022. We passed that last September, and it's scheduled to expire this August during council recess. The legislation I'm about to move seeks to keep in place the existing permission for condominium and cooperative associations to meet virtually. We've heard from these associations as professional representatives that virtual meeting flexibility continues to be very helpful, even after many activities that went virtual in response to COVID have returned to in person. We haven't made this change permanent so far, but that is something we will be reviewing going forward. For now, I move proposed resolution 25-268, the Association Meeting Flexibility Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there discussion? We'll have a roll call vote on the declaration, Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Louis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Louis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray is absent, and Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 absent.
The declaration is approved unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-322. Councilmember White,
So moved.
discussion? Since the declaration was approved unanimously, we'll have a voice vote on the bill, Bill 25-322. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is Green Housing Transition Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023, PR 25-270. Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Chairman. As part of last week's Budget Support Act vote, we took an important step toward reducing our government's contributions to climate change and pollution. The Committee on Facilities and Family Services, with the leadership of Councilmember Louis George, found funding for My Greener Government Buildings Amendment Act of 2022 to go into effect. This legislation, which Mayor Bowser signed into law at the start of this year, says that when our government builds or substantially renovates a building, it has to meet what's called the net zero energy standard. This means that the building's annual energy consumption can't exceed the renewable energy it produces on site or procures from dedicated offsite sources. Building to this standard tends to cost more in the short term, but it should also result in long-term savings through reduced utility costs, not to mention the environmental and health benefits of reducing our need for fossil fuels. Now, from the beginning, we drafted the Greener Government Buildings Law to apply not just to buildings that our government fully owns, but also to ones that we finance. Our local climate and public health advocates, including the Sierra Club and Washington Interfaith Network, specifically recommended that. Our government finances a lot of affordable housing development projects through programs like the Housing Production Trust Fund, the Housing Preservation Fund, the Housing Finance Agency's tax exempt bond financing, and the local version of the low income housing tax credit. Now that the bill is already fully through the budget process, the executive is telling us that they actually have some projects that are already in the affordable housing pipeline that cannot possibly comply. These are projects that will come online after the Greener Government Buildings bill becomes applicable, but that already have design features baked in that are incompatible with the net zero energy certification. So the only way to comply with the new net zero mandate would be for those important housing projects to come to a halt so that the solicitations could be rewritten, architects could redo their work, and project budgets could be completely overhauled to account for building technologies that can be more expensive in the short term, even if they result in utility savings in the long term. The emergency and temporary legislation that I'm offering today says that housing projects that our housing development finance agencies select for funding between now and the end of this calendar year will not need to comply with the newly adopted net zero standard. Representatives of the Department of Housing and Community Development told my office last week that this will amount to about 2,000 housing units. DHCD also told us that the existing solicitations exempted by today's legislation already incorporated energy and emission standards that are more stringent than any other jurisdiction standards for affordable housing. It's frustrating that the Greener Government Buildings bill has been publicly available since last April, and the mayor's administration is just now working out which pieces of it they can actually comply with. I anticipate 30 seconds, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
Thank you. I anticipate ongoing conversations between the council, the Department of General Services, the Department of Buildings, the Department of Energy and Environment, the Housing Authority, the Housing Finance Agency, and others as ambitious but necessary climate goals run into existing day-to-day practices. And I invite other council offices to stay on top of this with us. I move the Green Housing Transition Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Allen.
Thank you very much. And Councilmember White, thank you very much for moving this measure today. I think this is probably the narrowest solution to the issue that DHCD has raised. And I will let my colleagues know the Department of Energy and Environment has told me they are comfortable with where this has landed. I look forward to working to continue to work with you and the relevant agencies also to ensure that we can responsibly phase in the requirements of the Greener Government Buildings Act as they apply to subsidized affordable housing buildings. I think from a larger perspective, we know that we cannot pit providing affordable housing against our obligations to address the climate crisis. Both are imperatives, and I know we both agree and share that. I am supporting this today, and in my conversations with DHCD, it's clear they're taking energy efficiency and green housing seriously in the affordable housing that they do subsidize. But I do want to make sure that going forward, the council is both protecting the mandates that we've established and ensuring that all new construction, especially affordable housing, is not just affordable and inclusive, but that it's green and ensures healthy conditions for the residents needing that subsidized housing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion? We have the declaration before us. So roll call on PR 25-270.
Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray is absent. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. Turn now to the underlying bill, Bill 25-326. Councilmember White.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion. Since the declaration was approved unanimously, I'll do a voice vote on the bill, Bill 25-326. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is Virtual Open Meetings Authority Extension Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023, PR 25-273. Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, I'm moving the Virtual Open Meetings Authority Extension Emergency Amendment Act and associated emergency declaration. These emergency measures would clarify under the district's Open Meetings Act, a meeting of a public body is considered open to the public and therefore in compliance with the law if the public body provides a virtual method for members of the public to view or participate in the meeting. And to clarify for members under the Open Meetings Act, the term public bodies includes the council and the range of government boards and commissions in the district. The authority provided in this emergency is not new. In March 2020, the council first adopted similar language, allowing for virtual meetings to comply with the Open Meetings Act to ensure that public bodies could continue meeting during the COVID-19 pandemic and public health emergency without putting the public and safety of the public at risk. The council has since extended that authority several times on an emergency basis. As members know, the original impetus for this language has passed. Public health emergency is concluded and a number of public bodies, including the council, have resumed in-person meetings. Even where in-person meetings do occur, however, they are often hybrid. In other words, much like the access the council is providing for residents to view our meeting today, the public body provides an option for residents to attend the meeting both in person and virtually. There is good reason for providing residents with this flexibility. During the pandemic, we saw that offering a virtual option for residents to participate in public meetings greatly increased access and public participation. We know that many residents want to participate in public meetings, but for one reason or another cannot always attend in person. For example, in-person attendance may be difficult or impossible for residents with mobility issues, those who serve as full-time caregivers, or who are immunocompromised or sick. For other residents, in-person attendance may be feasible, but a virtual option is simply easier. For these reasons, I believe it is critical that the council extend this authority again to ensure that residents are provided every option to participate in these public meetings. Thus, I move the emergency declaration.
Thank you, Councilmember Pinto. Is there discussion from members? We'll have a roll call on PR 25-273.
Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray is absent. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. And Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-331. Councilmember Pinto.
I move the emergency act.
Is there discussion? Since the declaration was approved unanimously, we'll do a voice vote on the bill, Bill 25-331. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The bill is approved unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-274. Friendship Heights Business Improvement District Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move this declaration and the accompanying bill with Ward 3 Councilmember Matt Fruman. This measure would create a new Friendship Heights Business Improvement District to operate in conjunction with the neighboring Friendship Heights Urban District recently created by Montgomery County, Maryland. The bill establishes a tax rate of 16.5 cents for each net rentable square foot for Class 2 properties, excluding hotels. Hotels are taxed at $120 per room annually. Non-exempt Class 1 residential properties with 5 or more residential units are also taxed at $120 per unit. Affordable housing units are charged a percentage of $120 based on the qualifying area and median income required to participate in the affordable housing program. The committee recently held a hearing and intends to mark up permanent legislation at its next meeting. As with the next measure that we're going to hear regarding the Golden Triangle, this emergency measure is necessary to ensure implementation of the legislation as the Office of Tax and Revenue requires that the bid provide its tax roll information in July 2023 in order for taxes to be imposed in August 2023 and paid in September of this year. With that, I move the declaration.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there discussion? Councilmember Parker?
I'm happy to let Councilmember Fruman go first.
Councilmember Fruman?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie, for bringing forward this legislation and shepherding the bid process generally in this on this important project. Friendship Heights is seen better days, and it is really important that we bring our stakeholders together to bring Friendship Heights back to life in a way that can support the district and frankly also can support our neighbors in Maryland. This is a bid project that is different in a certain way in that there will be a complementary organization on the Maryland side of the border, and the two will work together to revitalize a critical area sitting on top of a metro with enormous opportunities for the district and for our economy. This has been a methodical process starting a year and a half ago with the formation of the Friendship Heights Alliance, and your hearings and this legislation are very important to get over the finish line and to get over the finish line on time for the 2024 tax year. And that's why this emergency legislation is critical, as is the emergency legislation on the Golden Triangle. This is entirely routine as part of an ongoing process and very much looking forward to its passage.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Parker.
Yes, I have a question, and this can, I'll direct it at Councilmember McDuffie as the chair of the committee, and more so, like, how have you, well, let me say this. There has been some feedback that this did not go through the quote unquote normal process. And if you could just speak to like some of the trade-offs, more so related to the tax issues and whether it's welcomed and supported.
I'm not quite sure what aspect of the normal process. It's going to go through the normal process as I laid out in the statement. And this might be a concern for the next one too, so I'm glad you asked the question. The emergency is necessary given the timeline necessary for the process to begin this year. And as I said in my earlier statement, the implementation of the legislation, according to the Office of Tax and Revenue, who testified at the hearing, requires that the bid provide its tax roll information in July, which obviously is right around the corner, in order for the taxes to be imposed by August of this year, when we're going to be on recess. And so we wanted to get this done now so that the process can begin for a part of the city, as Councilmember Fruman articulated, that has seen better days. And there's a lot of excitement and support from the ANC and from others who care deeply about this community in the District of Columbia. And so Montgomery County has already been taking some steps. I think it's appropriate that we do this emergency today so we can facilitate this process that has, I think, pretty much consensus support in the community. And so I'm not sure exactly what aspects of the normal process that one might think has not happened, which isn't already scheduled to happen. So if maybe there's some more elaboration on the question, I'm happy to try to hone in on the best answer.
May I chime in, Mr. Chairman? So there was a hearing on this bill, and everyone who came to testify testified enthusiastically in support of the creation of this business improvement district. You know, there can be a question, oh, are taxes going to be imposed on somebody when they didn't have, you know, when against their will? This is a grassroots initiative amongst the businesses in Friendship Heights in the district and in Maryland to seize an opportunity to transform a community. The ANC is very strongly in support. I have not heard anyone object to this. Everyone in this area is very excited about the work that's being done and the possibilities for Friendship Heights. Frankly, the groundwork for this has been done by an organization called the Friendship Heights Alliance, which has worked very, very closely with the community for a year and a half, meetings about this subject, events, bringing people along. This is not a controversial thing. And every step in the process has either already taken place or will take place in the near future. So the reason for this emergency is exclusively about being in a position to have the tax apply for FY24, which is very important to the success of this project, because we want to get started as soon as we can. And until I saw the same thing that you saw a half hour ago, that was the first time I had ever seen anyone express any reservations about this. So I just really think this is a very much a consensus and hope it can proceed on the path that it's proceeding.
No, thank you for that. That is really helpful, and it's heartening to hear so much support for this. What I was alluding to is the work with DSLBD that I'm assuming will be happening sometime in the near future. And the concern, to your point, Mr. Fruman, or Councilmember Fruman, I followed up to ask what's the concern here from a letter we received from the executive. And it was around the thought by some that if we forego the process, we may be not engaging everyone on the implications of the tax. I'm not suggesting we don't support this, but that was the spirit for my question.
Oh, no, I hear you. And so the mayor through DSLBD has already made a preliminary review of the bid application. The mayor through DSLBD issues a finding that the application criteria have been met and schedules a public hearing to be held within 45 days. That hearing scheduled for June 29.
And I'm happy to weigh in and give that timeline. I wanted to share that because I wasn't sure what you were alluding to earlier, but it was brought to my attention that there's some opposition to this, the mayor's letter, but I'm not sure that it's warranted given where this matter is and the fact that, as Councilmember Fruman mentioned, there's already preliminary approval and is scheduled for next week by DSLBD. And I don't think anybody anticipates any opposition to it along the way.
If there's no further discussion, we have the declaration before us, PR 25-274. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Nadeau?
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker?
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White. Bad connection, but I think he said yes. Councilmember
Yes.
Trayon White said. Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray is absent. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-333. Councilmember McDuffie.
So moved.
Discussion. Since the declaration was approved unanimously, we can do a voice vote on the bill. Bill 25-333. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-275. Golden Triangle Business Improvement District Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move this declaration and the accompanying bill with Ward 2 Councilmember Brooke Pinto. The Golden Triangle bid's 5-year charter is up for renewal, and the bid has requested a change to its tax rate from 17 cents per net rentable square foot to 19 cents for improved Class 2 and Class 3 property, excluding hotels, and an increase to 16 cents for hotels from 14.5 cents. Non-exempt Class 1 residential properties will be taxed at $163 per unit, up from $120. This increase is necessary to keep up with inflation and to fund the additional work the bid is engaged in to redevelop downtown. The committee recently held a hearing and intends to mark up the permanent legislation at its next meeting. This emergency legislation is necessary to ensure implementation of the legislation, as the Office of Tax and Revenue requires that the bid provide its tax roll information in July of this year in order for taxes to be imposed in August 2023 and paid by September of this year. With that, I move the declaration.
Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie. We have the declaration before us. Discussion, Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much, Councilmember McDuffie, to you and your team for moving this bill forward swiftly so that our Golden Triangle Business Improvement District bid can continue its impactful work. Our bids are critical partners for the success and continued recovery of our business corridors. The Golden Triangle bid, along with all of our other bids, works tirelessly to innovate and respond to the changing needs of its neighborhoods and the fluctuating economy. The Golden Triangle bid has been supporting Golden Triangle businesses and the broader community at large for 25 years. And over the last 3 years, the bid has led this community through the pandemic, navigating the many challenges its businesses and community members faced and advancing thoughtful and creative solutions. Under Leona Agaridi's leadership, this bid has been and continues to be at the forefront of helping to reimagine our downtown. This legislation and the forthcoming permanent bill, approved and supported by the Golden Triangle bid and its membership, will ensure that they have adequate funding for their programming and continued economic recovery. I look forward to their continued success and innovation on behalf of the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pinto. Is there further discussion? The vote will be a roll call vote on PR 25-275. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray is absent. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
There we go. Thank you. Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. We have the underlying bill. Bill 25-335. Councilmember McDuffie.
So moved.
Discussion. Since the declaration was approved unanimously, we'll do a voice vote on this bill, Bill 25-335. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
need to go.
Are there any opposed? The bill is approved unanimously. The next measure is PR 25-276. Children's National Hospital Research and Innovation Campus Equitable Tax Relief Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2023. Councilmember McDuffie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In December 2020, the council approved the Children's National Hospital Research and Innovation Campus Equitable Tax Relief Act of 2020, which provided a real property tax exemption for lots 824 and 826 in square 2950 to assist Children's National Hospital with the development of its research and innovation campus at Walter Reed. The law also required the developer to spend no less than 35% of the project's annual adjusted budget with certified and small business enterprises. While annual spend goals on capital construction projects can fluctuate significantly from projections in any given year, the pandemic and the economic disruptions in its aftermath have caused more significant fluctuations on this project. As the Department of Small and Local Business Development routinely ties CBE compliance on capital projects to a gross project spend goal, this legislation aligns children's CBE compliance structure with that of most other capital projects by requiring children to meet the 35% adjusted budget spend goal at the end of the full redevelopment project. We moved civil emergency and temporary legislation last year, and the permanent legislation introduced earlier this year will be marked up at the next committee meeting of the Committee on Business and Economic Development. This emergency action is necessary to ensure that Children's does not lose its real property tax exemption while the permanent law is enacted and becomes effective. With that, I move the declaration.
Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie. Is there discussion? The vote will be on PR 25-276. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Fruman.
Yes.
Councilmember Fruman votes yes. Councilmember Gray is absent. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The declaration is approved unanimously. We have the underlying bill, Bill 25-337. Councilmember McDuffie.
So moved.
Discussion. Since the declaration was approved unanimously, we'll have a voice vote on the bill, Bill 25-337. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. There's no objection. We'll consider the temporary bills in block. It's 7. Correct me if I get any of this wrong. Bill 25-340, local rent supplement program eligibility temporary. Bill 25-323, association meeting flexibility temporary. Bill 25-327, green housing transition temporary. Bill 25-332, virtual open meetings authority extension temporary. Bill 25-334, Friendship Heights Business Improvement District temporary. Bill 25-336, Golden Triangle Business Improvement District temporary. And Bill 25-338, Children's National Hospital Research and Innovation Campus Equitable Tax Relief temporary. Hearing no objection, we have the 7 before us. Is there any discussion? The vote again will be on all 7. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Robert White.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White.
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen.
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds.
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman votes yes. Councilmember Gray is absent. Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie.
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson.
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Parker.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker votes yes. And Councilmember Pinto.
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The 7 temporary bills are approved first reading unanimously. That's going to conclude the business for this legislative meeting. The next legislative meeting is scheduled for July 11th at noon. There will probably be a committee of the whole before that. The time is 12:45 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.